between the digital world and the real world. That can be, for example, I don't know how you call this, how is in English, this paper that is semi-transparent. Maybe you can start creating layers of semi-transparent content on the top of the real world in paper. And that could start creating the logic behind these technologies for the younger ones. And that's more important than the technology itself, but it's the logic behind it.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's the question. Okay, I'm looking at the. Okay, will the TeacherPedia team make this team equipment available for us here in Nigeria? Okay, we'll be talking about that later, but it's not something I can disclose now. Maybe we can have a kind of partnership with Rosario's company and see how we can do it. The teachers can get it at a very affordable cost. Thank you so much, Rosario, for the time you've spent with us today. Personally, I want to say a very big thank you for the wonderful job you are doing in the field of education. Thank you so much. All right, quickly, we are moving to the next speaker. She's a friend all the way from Estonia. She's a wonderful person, and she has spent a lot of time committing a lot into education. She's a graduate of EdTech from the University of Tartu in Estonia. And she's also one of the amazing team working for the EdTest 2021 in Estonia. Maybe I should briefly talk about this. This is a kind of a project that brings together EdTech tools developer around the world, and they try to match them with teachers around the world too. And what do they do with this? There are so many things going on in the field of education today. We have a lot of companies coming up with different gadgets that are not even supposed to be there for children to be working with. So with this, we bring teachers together to access these technologies. They use them. They give their feedback to the educators. Okay, this one that you are doing, it's not really good for the children. Please, you can adjust this or you do that. So this is one of the projects Anastasia is working on. So all the way from Estonia, Tallinn in Estonia, help me welcome on board Anastasia Chuneva. Thank you, Anastasia, you're welcome on board.
Thank you. Yep, I'm muted, and I'm gonna share my screen with you as well. One sec. Yes, I have been spending a lot researching the educational issues, like the issues that teachers encountered during their work, especially in these 2 years of COVID crisis. So we have found a lot of interesting things that have been overlooked so far. So there is a genuine need to invest in teachers. And by investing, I don't mean just money, just dumping money into there, investing time, investing energy, investing effort in reorganizing, restructuring the whole system, because the system we had so far is not functioning as we wanted to, as teachers wanted to. So what are those issues that we have to pay attention to? We have teachers that are there. They are on the ground, they are in schools, and they are in contact with their students. They are in the universities, they are in the academies, so they are in the contact with those people, with their real students. So they can be a powerful source of information to policymakers and administrations. So therefore, there needs to be a dialogue between these two parts. They also have to provide emotional support. They have to provide psychological support during the switches, during normal classes on site, yes, but also they have to be able to provide that while they're being forced to switch from one mode to another. And also what we have is that they need to accommodate their students' needs, and the needs are growing. So society is changing, the world around us is changing. So there is a need to accommodate all those things, like VR, like all that EdTech or just technology, and teachers have to be able to do so. Now, why is it important to invest? I mean, I'm talking to the basically schools and policy makers with this, but the teachers can also collaborate. They should collaborate. We expect them to collaborate in that. Professional development. So everything that you can find, everything. It's like the suitable path, the new ways of teaching. That is obvious, right? But every day we should put a very decent amount of time into that. Educators' well-being. This matter has been hugely overlooked during this past year, because they not only had to deal with their own personal things going on in their life, but the students would bring their own from their home. So it's not just the classroom management, it's so much more. It's like the families are being affected, and the children or the students in general, they would bring it to the classroom. So the educators have to be able to deal with that professionally. Also, one more thing that we have found out is that the educators function as the external support system for the motivation, to prevent the motivation drops. So students have been more and more alienated during this online kind of mode, while being forced to stay at home, basically. So they started all right, and they were feeling more and more like an outsider. So there was no group feeling, there was no community for them. So teachers had to function, had to put so much more energy into that to keep the group together in the virtual environment that was not unfamiliar for their students. And the last one, but not the least, is educator tech skills and EdTech knowledge. So the tech skills and EdTech knowledge are not the two different, like it is not the same. It's like two completely different things. EdTech skills means that you know how to meaningfully use technology. So you are able to operate that, and you know when and where and how to insert it in your own classroom for it to make the learning process much more enjoyable or fruitful for your students and yourself. Now, tech skills is basically that you're able to operate those systems. So you're not just surviving with them, you're fully able to operate all the functions of the instruments that you have been handed. What do we have to do with that now? So all these steps are highly important, and we have encountered problems with the step number 1 as well, to identify the problems that the teachers are facing in their like school, universities, whatever. Among my respondents, there have been a lot of similar kind of comments, complaints, or requests that have been neglected for some reason by the administration. So like the step 1 is failing already. So we have to establish these kind of very honest and very kind dialogue between the administration, the policymakers, and the teachers. Because right now it's like looks like two different worlds. So we need to go to the teachers, and we need to honestly ask them what is happening on the ground, what is happening with you, what is happening with your students, where do you need our help, how can we help you? And basically the second major request was organizing training and like giving them a support system in both how to manage technology and how to manage the EdTech, how to incorporate technology meaningfully in their everyday lessons, everyday school life. We do need to put a lot of effort and a lot of attention into the dialogue between the administration and the teachers, between the administration, teachers, and parents or students if they're like not underage. This would basically help everybody. I mean, the policymakers, their point is in make it work, make the system work. So if they look at the problematic parts, pardon me for calling problematic, like issues, okay, so they can tackle those and make the system work. Students can request what they need or what they want, because what we have seen in K2 education here in Estonia, that they were all overloaded. They were completely overloaded with the screen time, with the workload after their lessons, or like after the 8 hours of screen time, they had to like go back to their computers and do their homework. So the parents were expecting different things from schools, like they were expecting schools to control the kids. So that's why the problem started with the 8-hour schooling system online. Also, teachers, we have to go back there and to ask, how are you doing? How are your students doing? Basically, we need all three parts to be there, present in a dialogue, in a constant dialogue. So it's not like once a year after like the school year is done, okay, how'd it go? No, it should be like constant, and it should be kind, and it should be trustful, and there should be a feeling that you can share honestly what is really happening, not covering it up, not like excusing yourself or like pretending that everything is okay, even if it's not. We are in it together, teachers, educators, parents, students, policymakers, the government, we are in it together. So we have to make it work together. And the school system is changing right now drastically. And it is unlikely that we would go back to what we had before all that. So we have to like basically restructure the whole thing. And for that, we need a collaboration of everybody. And the last one is the freedom of maneuver. Like every single change is, it requires time. So we should be ready, we should be mentally prepared for the results to drop a little bit before they just soar after reconstruction. But what we have seen that nobody was prepared for the results to drop, or for the performance to drop, or for the like output to drop a little bit. And that would like cause panic. And basically that should be said aloud that it can happen and it probably will happen. So be prepared for that. Don't freak out, don't panic, that is okay. Now, what I'm expecting from you now is like a question, okay, Anastasia, that's cool, but I'm a teacher, what can I do? So what can the teachers do if the school is not cooperative, or if the school is not cooperative, or if they're like in their closed area and they don't know what to do? So first of all, surround yourself with those who understand, support, and encourage you. Find your support group. Find teachers who think alike. Find like, we live in the 21st century. We have internet. So we have this kind of meetings. We have this kind of like networking. So find those who support and who stand with you there, because you're not there alone. There are a lot of teachers, there are a lot of educators in the same situation, and they have been coping with that, and they have found the ways out of it already. So look for those. Just, that's okay, you are where you are, but look for those people. They will help you a huge deal. Now, what else can you do? You can exercise the freedom that you already have. We have found out that teachers' development and teachers' progress in acquiring EdTech or just technology skills, it stops where they find that limitation of their freedom. So there are some things imposed by the schools or universities or whatever, regulating what can they use, what cannot they use, like the mode of teaching. Are they synchronous or asynchronous? What tools are they using? So they would evolve until they reach that level. So you have some amount of freedom. You can try those tools. It can be like low case, it can be tiny experiments, but you still can do that. And please do that. Find, like, it would be good for you personally, professionally, and for your students. And develop a plan. find out how can you progress personally and professionally as a teacher. Find those 10 trainings, attend them, find networking events, find matchmaking events. There are like a lot of people who are there to help you. They want to help you and they have means to help you. And I'm again not talking just about money. I'm talking about experience. I'm talking about time. I'm talking about energy. I'm talking about tools or hints or like tips. How can you make something work? So go and look for those people. And you definitely should have like some kind of professional development plan, how to make it work for yourself in your environment where you are right now. I would probably stop here. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Contact me right now in the chat box. I will leave you my email if you wanna like contact me personally. Before I do so, please, dear teachers, remember that you're not in that alone. There are plenty of people who are there to help you. They're waiting for you to just take a step forward, because we need the initiative coming from people as well, coming from teachers as well. Everything is doable, everything is possible, even if you feel like you're like tight, your hands are tight, you're very limited in your schools, in universities, but there is still a lot to be done and you still can do a lot, and you will feel fulfilled basically while doing that, even if it's like a limited amount of change that you can make. That is it for now. Thank you for your attention, and I'm waiting for your comments.
All right, thank you, Anastasia, for that. That was so awesome, so powerful. I really want to say a very big thank you for the time spent and for the research that I really gone into that. I know you're a researcher and you must have done a lot of work in that. Thank you so much. But just one question from here, In the course of the presentation, you mentioned something about meaningful use of technology. Meaningful use of technology. To someone might be asking, okay, is there a way I'm using technology in such a way that is not, is not meaningful enough? Can you please spend a few minutes and shed more light on that? What do you mean by meaningful use of technology? Is there something that meaningful use of technology, or can you say something about that, please?
Well, to shortly answer to that,
yeah.
Basically, you should know what you want before you find the tool for that. It's not people for the technology, it's the technology for the people. So you're there, you know your classroom, you know your teacher, students, you know what you're working with, and you know what is your goal for that particular lesson. So now you know what you want. Now, how can you make it happen? If it's on site, that's one story. If it's online, it's another story. You have to be very clear about your environment, like where you're trying to apply that, and you should be very clear about the outcome you want to get out of it. It might take some researching from your side to try something. Like you can get 3 tools, 5 tools, or 10 or more similar to each other. They can look similar, but just one of them would fit your needs. So this is a little bit time consuming. It took me a long time to figure out what I needed. It'd be like hours spent on that, but that was worth it. So once you find something that would tackle that particular issue. So for example, we had Kahoot, right? Like everybody knows Kahoot. You just don't like throw that into the classroom, because for some students, it would not fit. For some activities, it would not fit. For some environments, it would not fit. So just be reasonable with what and why you're doing that. First of all, you are there and your students are there. So everything that is happening around that, it is for you guys. So make sure it is working for you, not against you. If it's not suitable enough, there is something else that would fit your needs better. So I would like stop here with the meaningful use. So make sure that it fits the need, that meets the need that you're trying to, and the goal that you're trying to accomplish during your lesson with that particular tool.
Thank you, Anastasia. That was a wonderful presentation. I'm sure everyone here agrees with the speakers that we are in the future and we have to be intentional about it. And speaking about education, speaking about technology, speaking about the future, we're moving into a panel discussion now. And it's my pleasure to invite the two speakers. However, just let me give you a brief about them. So we have Guru M. Cooper and Adekweju Prince. They will be the panelists for the session closing the digital divide in education. Goto M. Cooper is an international motivational speaker, mentor, educator, and social entrepreneur, whose activities are mainly focused on promoting quality education, youth development, and empowerment. He is the founder and the executive director of Educate the Future Liberia, a nonprofit organization that promotes quality education and unleashes the potential of underprivileged youths, including adolescent girls, to lead transformational change as tomorrow's leaders or today's leaders. He is a 2019 president of Burma African Leader, 2021 Mandela Washington Fellow, Unleash Innovation Global Talent, and Global Citizenship Education alumnus. He is a Yali RLC alumnus and Young Political Leadership School Fellow. Godo has inspired over 1,000 young people in Liberia and across the world through his story, work, and servant leadership. He currently serves as a representative for the National Education NGO Forum of Liberia, Speaker of Yali RLC Liberia Chapter, Global Youth Ambassador at Dear World, Unleash Sub-Saharan African Ambassador, and Global Citizenship Education Ambassador. We have a global citizen here with us today, and joining him is Adekweju Prince. Kweju Prince is an educator with more than 10 years of experience teaching and consulting. She has a proven record of leaving no students behind, regardless of their learning abilities. She has collaborated with local and international organizations to develop and sustain educational and career-themed programs, workshops, and seminars. During the pandemic, Kweju actively used modern EdTech tools to keep up with her students, the peak of which was hybrid learning, which she used to keep up with online and in-person students even after the pandemic. She has a passion for writing and focuses on storytelling as a way to give a voice to issues, causes, and situations that people can relate with, yet can't say anything about. She believes that every individual needs someone to speak to their nobility. All around kingship is possible. Kweju is a mother, a teacher, and a mentor to many. And both Kweju and Goto will be speaking on closing the digital divide in education. They're experienced about this subject and they'll be sharing a lot of their experience with us. Join me as we receive both of them.
It's good to have you here today, Kweju and Goto. May I request you to unmute yourself? Okay, quickly, let's go into the discussion of today. We've heard a lot about digital divide in education. We've heard a lot about things going on against the less privileged. But to some of us that we've not really understood much about that, I would like to start with Adekweju. Can you please quickly share with us what you understand or what is meant to be the word, I mean, the phrase digital divide? What is it all about in education?
Okay, so good afternoon. It's afternoon in Nigeria. I'm beaming from Nigeria for now. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Stephen, for having me, and thanks to Rosario and those who have spoken before. Anastasia really covered what it actually means to be a teacher. Everything I could literally relate to what she was saying. So, and my fellow panelist, Mr. Goto M. Cooper, nice to meet you. So digital divide, basically, I'm not going to use like too much grammar. I'm going to try to simplify it, is the discrepancy, like a huge difference between what is expected of us educational technology wise and what is available based on your personality, your location, and resources, and what's available to you in terms of resources. For example, for now, I teach in Africa. And when Rosario was talking, I was just like, are you sure we're in the same continent world? She's like light years ahead of what's available to me, you understand? Even though relating to people like Stephen all the time makes it easy for me to understand what she's saying, because I don't just live myself. I'm very internet compliant. So in simple English, digital divide in education is basically the discrepancy in the use of technology in education, especially earlier to secondary school, based on the person using it, the resources available, and the location of the person, teacher and student inclusive. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Adequeju. May I ask this from GoTo? Adequeju has spoken about Nigerian situation. I know you are connecting from Liberia. Do you have similar experience? Is it the same? Digital divide, the meaning Adequeju give from Nigeria, is it similar to the meaning you have in Liberia based on experience now, or you have something different entirely?
All right, thank you, Stephen, for the opportunity to be at the summit, and thanks to all of the speakers and the panelists and those joining. Good to see you again, Alexandra, and good to be on the same platform with Adepichu Prince. Wonderful experience for Nigeria. So in Liberia, like digital divide is quite more different. Like Nigeria experience quite different from that of Liberia's experience. In Liberia, we look at the problem that affect digital divide, and that comes from all walks of life. One thing that happened is the access to high-speed internet. You see, we define digital device in a way like as you have access to high-speed internet, but in Liberia, it's not as it is, right? And then access to reliable devices. And so a lot of people see digital device to have access to reliable devices, but not everyone has access to reliable devices, and not everyone has access to high-speed internet. Even data cost is pretty much high. So digital device in Liberia is quite more different on experience than that of Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Okay, may I go back to you now? GoTo. Can you cite the example of how particular it is that it's so different from what we are getting in Nigeria? How are the children or students in Liberia experiencing digital divide in general?
So a few examples will be like digital device. You talk about telephone, right? You talk about the personal computer. You talk about the internet, and you also talk about that of television. But we have a very high illiteracy rate in Liberia, and not many people can afford the digital devices. So as the result, you find a home where a lot of people have access to digital device. They become almost like the richest in their community, and everyone wants to be around. So there are a couple of homes or community dwellers that cannot afford a digital device, like even a cell phone, maybe the cheapest of $10 US. So it makes it quite more different, and you should have access to these things if you want to get information disseminated, if you want to learn more. So it should be accessible, but it is not accessible. I don't know much about Nigeria on accessibility, but in Liberia it's quite different. And those examples that I just listed, there are few people can afford it, and it should be something that everyone should afford, but not everyone can afford solid.
Thank you so much, Gato. I just want to ask, now that we've talked about what digital divide in education is and some of the possible causes, do you want to shed some light on the effects of the digital divide in education in 21st century? Probably not just telling us about the effects, but also letting us know how we can mitigate some of these effects, because some of the factors you mentioned are not, they are micro factors that cannot be demystified in one day. But if we're going to take our students from point A to the future, which is already here, how do we mitigate these effects? So we're looking at the effects and also how to address, how to somehow reduce the possibility of going back when the entire world is going light years ahead, in your words, Adekweju.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, let's just say that I'm going to be using the African situation in general, based on my own experience and networking, as it were. Now, the thing is, to a large extent, the average Nigerian or the average West African, to a large extent, can afford a smartphone. This is because I understand that the quality of some phones that are not allowed in some countries are allowed here. Okay, and that is what helped us in the pandemic. So now I'm going to start with the effect. The effect of this digital divide is already manifesting. It's not even something that it's quite glaring. As a matter of fact, if you're listening to me and your network is freezing, I'm double sure you're in Africa. I'm double sure you're on a 3G network, or something is wrong with the cell phone. As a matter of fact, when people invite me for things like this, the first thing I do is ensure that my internet is working. The first thing I do is ensure that my Wi-Fi is well charged. As I'm talking to you, there's no power supply. I had to upgrade my device to something that has a battery that can last at least 2 hours. Same goes for my internet service provider, same goes for my phone. And that is capital intensive. So now the effect already seen it in the sense that even if you as an African or you as a Nigerian can afford all these devices, I don't have power over the power supply. The ineptitude of the government would, affect your work, quote and unquote. So now what we've been able to do during the pandemic and up till now, because we're still in hybrid learning, and what I'm going to suggest to the organizers of this summit and the ones we want to partner with is, number one, we need to get across, we need to find cheaper devices that's accessible to the average African, Asian, all those underdeveloped countries, because we can't help it. I told you guys, I was going to Rosaria and I'm like, are we in the same world? Because what she's already using, I only saw it in the movie. Can you imagine? And right now, I had to look for a way to get another degree that I need to step up my game. I can't wait for Nigerian government to do anything. So we need to partner with companies, hardware companies that can provide devices at a cheaper rate. Whether they'll do it as a CSR or they will give us something that the average Nigerian can afford. Number two is we need to sit on the government's head, whether we like it or not, because they are already circumventing the system. They're sending their kids to school in these developed countries and deepening the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So we have to ensure that even if it's the internet and the power, government has to do something. And then the third one is, as teachers, we need to think beyond our present circumstances. We need to encourage our students and ourselves to get partnerships that work. The truth is, development is not going to come to meet you in your school. Let me not use your house now. It's not going to come. You need to shelve out whatever it takes, look for scholarships that work. And I know a teacher in Benue, all he does is push his students to Fulbright scholarships. He coaches them on how to get it from secondary school. He keeps pushing, he keeps pressing that let's get ourselves out there as much as we can. So now, when we do that, now on our own as teachers, we need to sacrifice, because now I liked what Anastasia said, that look for personal development. You can't get anywhere if you are not intrinsically motivated. The reason why I was able to do so much in pandemic, I even got awards for that, was because I told myself, I'm not leaving my students behind. I told them, if you don't have a phone, go and get your mom's phone. I'm sure somebody in the community has a phone. We will do 1 hour or 2 hours every day throughout the pandemic. I had to upgrade my own device. I had to even raise a loan for that, to upgrade the device. And like I said, I need devices that can stay without power. I need internet service providers. So to just summarize everything I'm saying is, the world is already light years ahead of Africa. Sorry, it's already ahead. So what we can do, those of us who are agitated, we can force these partnerships. It can happen. We have foundations that are ready to partner if you are sincere enough because we have unsincere people. They give you visa, just disappear into another man's country. They give you money, you get a chieftaincy title. No, if you can get very, very sincere people, we can push this on a micro level and keep pushing. And lastly, on the internet issue, there's something some schools did in Nigeria, and actually someone I was researching for this topic. There's something they call micro clouds. Rather than all of us be on the internet at the same time and it's slow and we can download, we can move, we can get all these resources, the ebooks, the videos, the teachings on a micro cloud and localize it. So that way, whether there's internet or not, your students can access whatever it is you have to offer. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adekweju. That was a very passionate response. And thank you for being as real as possible with us, bringing actual scenarios of what the digital divide is like in Africa, or specifically in Nigeria. Goto, before I present you with the next question, is there something you want to say about what Adekweju just discussed?
I think she gave some real-time information that's happening in Africa. Yes, I like the fact that young people need to step out of their comfort zone and try to look for capacity building opportunity, because the thing is, if you want to reach to the sky and only your eye can get there and not your feet. So you need to start preparing your roadmap in order to get your eye moving. At every step you take, your eye go further beyond. So you have to put the energy, you have to put the perseverance, you got to embrace failure. And I like exactly what you said. It's time for African youth to wake up and start to look for what is possible and not what is impossible. And that comes with digital technology, because the world is shifting. COVID has taught a lot of lessons. And I like the point. I look forward to my question.
Thank you so much. Also very related, but I'm bringing this to what every teacher here, every parent here experienced during the pandemic. You know, why the advanced world in 2020, when the pandemic started, why the advanced world just migrated to online learning, like they've been waiting for these, even though it came with other challenges, among other things. In Africa, it was difficult. Many students were not able to access any form of learning. Schools were shut down because of the pandemic, and only students, which is a very minute number, where only a few of them were able to access technology and keep in touch with formal education. 1 year down the line, the pandemic started over a year now, March. Do you think that there's been a significant improvement on this? Assuming something like this happens again next year, we're not looking forward to that, but what if it happens again? How prepared are we? Has there been improvements? Will education still go back to a standstill in places like Africa?
Thank you, Esther. See, the pandemic actually disrupted education for millions of students across the world. We shifted from our conventional way of learning to a more digital learning. And a lot of things change, and we try to look at how can we settle in and learn in crisis. I think that a lot of things came up with education in emergency. With the pandemic teaching of these lessons and how things has changed, in my perspective, there are little, perhaps on a 100 scale, maybe there are 20% that have changed when it comes to digital technology in education. For Liberia perspective, like I shared earlier, that a lot of young people in Liberia during the time of the pandemic, we had a 4-month lockdown, and there was no conventional learning. Everything went online, including universities went online, and students were not learning. The government came up with something called learning by radio to continue learning while students were doing, while students are at home during the lockdown. But that was something very innovative, but it did not go as expected, because students, many of them, especially those in rural area or those in hard to reach area or poor connection area, were not able to listen to the radio. And there was no form of visual learning. Although you're in a classroom where mathematics is a tough subject and you're doing it online through radio, you're still not going to find an equation to a quadratic formula. It's quite difficult. And that shows, like, all right, if the pandemic, now things cease a little while, and we're on a tear wave of the pandemic, and we don't know when the world will go back to normal. But if the pandemic resurfaces and stay for a longer time, I think learning will definitely be disrupted for a longer period, because in Liberia, there's only 2% that have changed so far since the pandemic actually took place. And a lot of people, like I said, don't have access to the digital devices. And the students don't, even if those students have access, they don't have smartphone, and they don't have digital knowledge. Like young Liberians don't have digital literacy to actually move online. The research skill is very low. So if we continue to do these things, I think the government needs to step up at this time and try to create something of a formal classroom for students to understand digital technology. Because when the pandemic hit a fourth wave, which we're not praying for, a lot of students will still be disrupted. If they hit fifth wave or whatever wave it is, a lot of students will still be disrupted. Now universities are going online, but there's no communication. Internet data is very high and people cannot afford it. And the companies are now waiting to reduce the charges. That makes it more difficult for students. It makes education more unaffordable, because you pay huge fees and come back to buy data on a higher cost, and then internet try to trip, it becomes more different. So there are few changes, but a lot need to be done. And if the government in those African countries cannot step up to empower young people through digital literacy programs, and also work along with companies to reduce the data cost and give students opportunity to smartphone and teach them how to use the smartphone and computer or PC, it becomes more difficult for students in the next few years if we still get the pandemic going forward.
Thank you so much, Goto. I just want to follow up on that question. And we've been talking about access to equipment and other resources that can enable online learning, for instance, or try to bridge the gap in our education. But there's also a school of thought that believes that the digital divide is much more than an access issue and cannot be alleviated merely by providing the necessary equipment. What can you say about this?
I think we have to go back and teach our young people how to use technology. If we can't do these things, it still become a problem going forward. If you don't have knowledge in anything, if a capacity is not built, you cannot make a change when it comes to technology. And that's something that we need to take priority in. That's something we need to start with a lot of students. They are passionate, they want to learn. They're used to the conventional way of in-person learning. Now we go online and they don't have access to these things, but they don't know what to do, even if they have access. When we give them the formal training and build a capacity, I think they are waiting to drive social change.
Thank you. I like that response. I'll just make a comment about that and then hand the speaking platform to Steven. Speaking about that, when one of the speakers was talking earlier, she mentioned the need to awaken curiosity in our students. And I think that's something that almost every teacher should do from the get-go, because even for young people these days who have access to technology, like you said, Godo, they don't even know what to do. They don't have those requisite research skills. They don't know how to source for the right information. They're spending their time on social media when that energy could be harnessed into something else. And this is the difference between the excellent student or the innovator tomorrow and the regular mediocre person. So when we talk about this digital access, digital divide, it crosses a lot of lines. It's not a one-way thing like you have rightly highlighted, but I just wanted to mention that fact that this curiosity, they need to always thirst for more knowledge. And once teachers are able to awaken that in their students, even when there are limitations, even when the teachers cannot meet to guide the students themselves would be eager to know more about the world around them, about where the world is going to. And that makes everybody an innovator. We don't all have to be programmers, but we can innovate in our own different ways by the kinds of things that we expose ourselves to. Stephen, I'll just hand this over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Esther. That's a very amazing one. It's so sad to understand that we are still at this very stage in 21st century. But that's not the reason we are here. We are not going to drag that. But there is a question. I'm going to ask the last question for this session. But before I take the last, okay, I'm going to throw the last question to you, Adepeju. It's all about that. Somebody posted something on the chat box that a lot of EdTech solutions that tech companies are churning out aren't so affordable just yet. Now, I started thinking about that. Do you think there should be a regulatory body? I'm just thinking to look into the tech tools that we are using in education. Yes, nobody is against the fact that we have companies coming up with EdTech tools. It's a good thing, thanks to the new things that have happened in the last 1 year. But do you think we should clamor for government to regulate how these things are being used? For example, if this is for education, you must do it in such a way that everyone can afford it, or they should just be allowed to run their business the way they want. Over to you, Adepeju, and I will also want Gotu to mention something about that before we round up.
All right, thank you for that. Now, on a discourse before now, that's about 6 months ago, that's been the major issue, because like Gotu rightly mentioned, internet access, the amount you pay for that bad network is insane. It's just out of this world. And it's not accessible to the average, just to the rich and maybe upper middle class. So the government, and like I said earlier, these are areas that you really don't have power over. I can go and install a mast in my compound because I want internet. This is government. So government should get away from bureaucracy and go into what they have called them to do. If truly education is like has a right footing in their policies, it's easy to do all this clouting. MTN did it one long time ago. It's been a while now that within the campuses, the internet services are cheaper. If you take your phone and browse inside the university campus or something, the rate at which your data moves is slower for the same service than if you're outside that setting. We should do that. And also, they just keep collecting taxes from all. Okay, let's assume that the way it is right now, the African nation or developing countries can afford some things as it were. Why are we consuming Apple products, and what's Apple doing to us, for us? Why are we consuming lots of Microsoft? No, seriously. Apple, you sell 10 million units of your phones in Nigeria. What are you going to do for Nigeria? I know they tax them, whatever, but they can turn that around. They embezzle the tax anyway. They can turn that around. Give us solutions. Okay, we're going to waive tax for you. Give us solutions. And okay, we don't have. Are you going to employ African students that, or let me say graduates that know what they're doing, and give them this knowledge to make something cheaper for us, or you give us something cheaper? So we need to just go away from normal politics and go back into what actually works. Is the reason why the average African will apply for education abroad, and he or she will get funding up to $20,000, $30,000. How many white people can come to Africa for such things? You won't even get the admission in the first place, not less of funding. It means somebody is doing something right in those developed countries. Education has a full-fledged focus. We can do it here. We can do it in a way that there are internet-free zones for some specific kind of devices. If this device, for example, is for my online school, once I go on MTN or Glo, internet is free. If I bring an iPhone or a Samsung, then I have to pay. And there has to be a way to also ensure that they don't corrupt that process. Go and get a student phone and use it for your own business. These things are not set in stone, it's doable, and that's my own. So if we get that right, I mean, I just can foresee education Eurasia in Africa soon.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Gotu, would you like to say something about that?
Yes, I actually like one of the the persons who wrote in the chat room talking about it's going to be difficult to regulate GSA companies. I'm not seeing the possibility right now very easily with government regulation on internet data cost. My point is so simple. The government is the government for the people, of the people, and by the people. The GSM companies are business people who come to solve problems and make profit. The government impose huge tariff on the business people that get them somehow ignored and scratch back at the government, which reflect to the citizen. In Liberia, we had something a couple of months ago called the 3-day free call. At that time, Liberians were enjoying the internet and the core hours that you go to bed with the phone in your ear and the person talking, they're just talking, but you don't have time. We were enjoying that. When the government imposed high tariff on the people came back and blocked all of the 3-day calls. The government went back and increased taxes, and the taxes came back to the citizens, and the citizens were affected again. So while we were paying $10 for, we are now paying $15 because the government is looking at it different, and the regulatory authority of the government called the Liberia Telecommunication Authority, the LTA.
Oh my God. I think we lost.
It's not in government or the government. So a full ability to internet data will trickle a lot of effect back to the citizen. The best thing we can do is the government to sit on a round table and have a discussion that will influence the companies to bring back those things that will help the Liberians, especially the students, and promote education. If one sector of education have a lot of things to be done with digital technology, the health sector will cry. The engineering sector will cry. The agricultural sector will cry. All of the various sectors will cry. Only education getting this. The government need to do it across the entire country, and every sector have equal benefit. And that is something the government can do. And I believe all governments should start to think about that. Once that is minimized and the data is given or whatever information it is, people will not be afraid of taking risks online to get capacity development. Students will not be afraid to take 3-4 hours to learn. There are a lot of people, although not all, that are waiting to go extra mile in a capacity development online, but they don't have the access to digital technology and the high cost of internet. The government, through the GSA company, need to start working with schools, need to start reducing the high cost of data and bandwidth, needs to start promoting digital technology in communities, and start creating awareness to digital literacy programs. When these things are done, I honestly tell you that the world, especially Sub-Saharan Africa and Liberia, my country, we are heading for more important future in technology.
Thank you so much for that amazing comments. I think I will be rounding up. But before we close this section, I want to talk about something that was posted in the chat box to Adepeju. Someone said, you mentioned something about a microcloud. Maybe you can quickly elaborate on that before we round up this session.
Okay, the microcloud is actually accessible in Africa. It's something that the average, we call them IT engineers, can do. So basically, it's those who own private schools that can still afford this, because government is just sitting down, by the way, for the public schools. But what it entails is that rather than go to YouTube or try to access ResearchGate, all these internet databases all the time, what they do is they download the cloud and localize it in your school or in your environment. So for example, if I have a secondary school and it's a science-based secondary school, the augmented reality practicals, maybe your own teaching will be in the micro cloud. Okay, how many of us have been in an office that there's only one centralized printer? So all the systems are connected to that printer. You don't need internet to print. You just print, you just send it to the printer. That's what happens. So once I'm in that environment and my system or phone is configured, I don't need an internet. to access the information. Anything I want is in the microcloud. While the microcloud is suspended with an actual internet anyway. It's only if I need the new information, I have to use the internet. But once it's on that microcloud, it's accessible to me without internet. So governments or developing countries and schools who can afford it can consider that. Once they buy it, they suspend it in them. That's what we use though.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adepeju, for the insight. Thank you, Golu. I know you are supposed to be somewhere now. Thanks for making this time out to be here. It's so good to have you guys around today. A big thank you for sacrificing the time. Have a wonderful day. Now I'm going to the next speaker, who is a wonderful friend from Lebanon. She will be talking about mental resilience for educators. I will quickly go through is a friend from Lebanon by name Alexandra Kujabachi. A mental map of resilience for educators is what she will be talking about today. Alexandra is the founder and CEO of TechED. TechED is an organization that is in Lebanon. Is a learning experience design enterprise, nurturing 21st century skills and mindset transformation for talent development. She's an international public speaker. She's a consultant and author of recipient. She's also a recipient of the Alain Decaux Literary Prize. Alexandra has been recognized as a MENA Leadership Academy Fellow of 2016-17, G20 Young Global Changer 2017 and 2021, Unleash Global Talent 2018, and UNESCO APCEIU Youth Leader 2019. And as the connection creator, she explores the breadth and depth of multidisciplinary putting connection at the service of innovation and self-actualization to reinvent the ways in which we think, learn, and the way we work. So she will be talking about the mental map of resilience for educators. Thank you, Alexandra. It's good to have you here today. Over to you. Oh, sorry.
Perfect. Otherwise, it would be a bit challenging to have a conversation while being muted. And it's like wanting to change tech in places like Nigeria or Liberia or Lebanon or any other place without having the right infrastructure. So it's quite telling of the conundrum where we live in. First of all, thank you, Stephen, for having me today. Thank you, speakers, for your amazing energy. Goto, it's lovely to see you after 2019 Korea conference. And it's a pleasure really to get the chance to meet with you, to have a conversation. Many of the ideas that were shared by previous speakers, I'm going to come close to them, and you're going to see how these ideas somewhat intersect. But we are going to have a kind of a parenthesis, or a kind of, we're going to go away from the topic of pure EdTech, and we're going to wander off in the realm of the mind and the mindset. And then we're going to come back to EdTech. So we're going to go on a small adventure. I will be sharing my screen now. I hope you can see it. And what I would like to talk to you about is personal experience I had to go through in Lebanon. I feel that it puts us in a situation closer in terms of experiences and challenges, and that all allow me to reflect on resilience and anti-fragility. So before we start, just a few points to consider: that if I disappear, don't worry, I'll be back in 57 seconds. It means that I had a power cut. And if you hear some kind of a nosy beep, 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 beep in the background, don't worry, nothing's about to explode. It's just the backup power. Oh, the electricity is back. It's just the power and the generator and the stabilizer. All of them working together to make sure that I'm here with you today. So when you live in a place where there's so much uncertainty and instability, including the electrical power, one, you become an electricity expert without even wanting to become one. And two, you start to find creative solution about things. So a bit about the context in Lebanon and why we're having these crises. Lebanon is currently going through one of the most intractable political deadlocks and economic collapses that put us in the top 3 or 5 countries when it comes to hyperinflation, alongside Venezuela and Zimbabwe. We have today, I think we're up to 92.3% in devaluation. Inflation rate reached more than 650% in some cases. And private banks have installed severe capital control on people's savings. And most of the people who are suffering from it are just random citizens. And all of that, of course, was added on what we were all going through, which is the COVID-19 crisis. And then this picture you can see is from August 4, 2020, with the Beirut port explosion, presumably the 3rd biggest non-nuclear explosion in history. 200 people died, 8,000 were injured, 200,000 were displaced, and that only, obviously, worsened the situation. And that was a struggle. That was a deep, profound struggle. It was undesired, it was unwanted, it was unwelcome, but it was also the birthplace of possibility. It was an instigator of growth. It was a shaper of leadership. And what happened in 2020, in the midst of all that, is that I had the chance, the beautiful chance, to collaborate with more than 88 organizations and leading figures in education from 29 plus countries. Together, we reached thousands of people across the world, and that would have never been possible without the digital transformation of COVID-19, and without the feel that as individuals, as human beings, we need to support one another. But the real question is, when we're in a situation of extreme chaos, complete chaos, and I believe you've felt that, you've seen that, how can we reflect back on our experience and draw a mental map of resilience? This is the question that I was obsessing over since 2020. And I ended up with 4 key insights that I felt I wanted to share with you today. And the first one in this mental map of resilience, is the mind. And when it comes to the mind, the first thing that I realized is extremely important is to think like an engineer. You know, here's an interesting story. When the first 3 SpaceX rockets were just exploding in the sky, and obviously that's a lot of money that was turned into the design of these rockets. Elon Musk's mother, so May Musk, felt like just curling in a corner, and that should have been Elon's reaction. That was his project, but his reaction was, "Oh, now we know what went wrong. We'll do it right the next time." And that is amazing. The ability to streamline the process, to understand what works, what doesn't work. And this is very much aligned with what Anastasia said about the need to implement meaningful EdTech. We understand the meaning of meaningful EdTech when we understand the type of problems that we have and how we need to solve them. And in order to do that, it is crucial for us to be able to think like engineers, to be able to streamline the process from the point A to point Z, and to understand at what moment in time do we have a problem and how can we fix that problem. So the first element is that we need to see, to understand, to critically question the different parts of the system, from the educational system, from the infrastructure system, and so on and so forth. The second important element, which I personally love, and I'm sure that would be Tesla's favorite, which is visualization. And Tesla was an incredible person when it comes to visualization, because he was capable of seeing the system, how it works, the product, how it works, with full precision. And when we have that kind of clarity, so I love what was shared in the interventions earlier now, because it seems that there's clarity over what is it that we need to do. And when we have that kind of clarity, we can move forward with it. When it comes to the type of EdTech that we can use and how we can use them, having clarity over how that works is also very important. But then there's something very important we need to understand about how engineers work, is that they don't get it right every single time. The process that we need to go through as engineers, but also as entrepreneurs, is that we need to go through trial and error. We have to fail and fail more and fail better, and eventually figure out what works and what doesn't work. And this is where testing and improving is important. And I hope that the past year and a half was a good ground for us to test things, test different things, see what works, what doesn't work, understand, and based on that, know what kind of solution we can propose and know what kind of solutions we can implement. So what I realize is that when things around us are uncertain, difficult, challenging, when everything around us is dysfunctional, when we sit down and look and it's like, oh my God, what is happening in the world today? We need to take a step back and see things with the eyes of an engineer, understand the problem, come up with alternative realities, visualize them, test them, and improve them on the go. But in order to do that, in order to have that kind of clarity, we need something else. We cannot have a clear mind if at the beginning we don't have a clear heart. And what do I mean by that? By that, I mean that we need to think like artists. Okay, that's even weirder. An artist is a person at the end of the day who creates. And that's one of the most fundamental aspects of the definition. So be it a painter, a sculptor, a writer, a film director, whoever that is. At the core of the artist's work is the process of creation, whatever its form may be. And art is a process of meaningful and beautiful transformation, at the center of which beats the human heart that strives to express itself, to express its identity, and to imagine and deliver something. So from what appears to be void, to be chaotic, an artist extracts an energy that becomes a presence. From what tool we can create a masterpiece. From even a very simple tool, we can create something that ends up being a masterpiece. And in order to do that, we need to understand that chaos is part of the process. And we need to love chaos as being a phase that would allow us to emerge with something different, something unique, something that is close to a masterpiece. And I remember back in 2013, I was in France. I visited Paul Cézanne's studio in the Provence, in southern part of France. And it was just a very small room with a very tall glass window. It was looking north, and there were skulls, and there were brushes, and there was a coat that was hanging with a hat. And you felt as if Cézanne was like going into the room at any moment in time, grab his hat, and just go and do something. But you look, and this was a museum, obviously, but it was so chaotic. A museum is supposed to be organized. When you walk into, for instance, a national museum, you have everything organized. You have the glasses, and you have the labels, and everything is super organized. But his studio wasn't. His studio was a complete mess. And it is in that studio that he was capable of painting all the things that became legendary in terms of art. They became part of art's classic history. So in that mess, where everything is chaotic around us, the possibilities can emerge. And this is where innovation comes in. When we understand that everything around us is chaotic, and when we accept that chaos is part of the process, and when we activate the eyes of an engineer to find the problems and solve the problems, we can combine all of that and reach a higher level of innovation. And in order to do that, we need to be present in the moment. This is what the artist does. The artist basically is present in the moment. We need to give room to imagination. Take moments to think, okay, if I don't do it like this, how can I do it? How else is it possible to be done? What more can be done? And imagination is a crucial part of the artist's work. And only then we can allow ourselves to create a first draft. And the first draft as artists, which is equivalent to the first experience, educational experience, new educational experience as educator, is probably going to be a mess. It might be a failure. But it will tell us what are the things that we need to work on, what are the things that we can actually continue implementing because they're absolutely amazing. And that is very important. So we need to understand the mess, we need to accept the mistakes, and we need to create a new masterpiece. And this is, and here I'm going to go back to the first speech with Rosario, where you did the comparison between education and marketing. And it's curious because I wanted to share with you one element from marketing that is very relevant and that explains why mistakes are so important. So what sometimes happen in marketing campaigns is that they send this apology email. And the open rate usually for these apology emails, there are different tests that ended up with different results, but it ranges from 66% to 85%, knowing that perhaps the average open rate of a newsletter is like, I don't know, 10%. This is huge. Why is it so high? Because making mistake makes you human. So as teachers, as educators, it makes you who you are, it makes you human. And as long as you're accountable to the things that you do, to the mistakes that you do, and try to fix them, try to make them better, then this would put you in a situation where, okay, I respect my teacher as a student because of all the things that they're doing, because of all the things that they're doing for me. And creating that connection, creating that connect between the teacher and the student at that level allows the student to want to do more, to want to perform better. And when we have that upon a layer of more access, upon a layer of a better structure, upon a layer of better tools, you can only see how much more it's possible for them to achieve in their life. So we have the mind with the engineer, we have the heart with the artist, and then we have the body. And when I talk about the body, I mean the body of an athlete. I don't mean that you need to go to the gym tomorrow. Of course, it's very healthy to go to the gym, but that's not what I mean by that. What I mean by that is that an athlete is someone who knows, understands how his systems work, or her system, because an athlete will also be an amazing young lady. But what I first want to tap into is the power of practice. Athletes practice like crazy. Just going to give the example of Kobe Bryant. He is known to have something that is called a killer routine, because it's a killer routine, because he practices relentlessly every day, even when out of season. There is a practice shots there. He has lift weight, he has to lift weights, he has to work on his cardio, and he does that all the time. So practice is very important, but what is more important is to go away from blind practice, i.e. to repeat the same thing over and over and over again, because we've been doing that for the past 500 years. So if we do that over and over again, we're not going to go anywhere. That's blind practice, and we're not going to be able to reach the highest level of athletic achievement. So effective practice requires awareness, it requires mindfulness. We need to lose ourselves in the work, but we also need to be very aware of what it is that we're trying to do and try to achieve. So by being aware of all the steps that we're doing, we can also be more aware of the problems when they arise and how to solve them when it comes to anything else. The second element, which is very important, is recovery. So you probably have heard of this before. Athletes, I think that the quote was, athletes work hard on their training, but they work harder on their recovery, or something like that. And what happens usually after a break, after an injury, after a COVID pandemic, an athlete knows that the comeback is going to be hard, and possibly harder than anything that he had ever done before, or she had to do before. But an athlete also knows that there's a deep voice inside that says, I can do this. I have the ability to do this. And as teachers, because of the chaos, because of the pandemic, because of the uncertainty, because of the lack of infrastructure, sometimes we ask ourselves, but how can I make it work? How can I make it happen? And the question is to follow the voice of the athlete in recovery mode. I can do this. And in order to do this, you need to have an anchor. And here I'm also going to come back to what Anastasia said about having a community, going, networking, joining groups of people, coming to Stephen's TechED Summit. It's important to do that because that gives an anchor, and the anchor gives stability, and stability allows you to keep your balance, and your balance is important for you to be able to perform at your absolute best. And so anchor is extremely, extremely important. And the fourth element, which is my personal favorite, because my motto in life is connect the dots, and Persed's motto in life is connect learning dots. You see a pattern here. Connecting the dots is perhaps the epitome of what living in the 21st century means. Everything is a network. This Zoom environment is a network. We come from different countries, from different backgrounds. We're connected. In the same way that, for instance, Wikipedia works, or any digital encyclopedia works. So when you go into such a page, you don't enter a house, you enter into a use. If it's XR, you enter in a metaverse. If, for instance, you go on Wikipedia and you search for creativity, you're going to see that the first, I think, 2 or 3 sentences, the first paragraph, basically, it's made of 7 links that are connected to other ideas. The entire page has around 400 plus links connected to external websites, and more than 1,600-700 links connected to other pages inside the digital encyclopedia. That's a lot of connections. That's a lot of connections. And that means that wherever you go, there is no dead end, because we're not in a model that is linear. We're not in the model that is much like the encyclopedia that we used to have before, where you have to go through A to B to C to D and so on and so forth. You have to go to the you have to agonize, and then you have to go through harrowing hurt and pinching pain in order to get to the R of resilience and rebirth, and all of the things that you look for. You just search for them directly and you find them. So the first thing that we need to understand is that we're not isolated. We're not isolated socially. We're not isolated from the perspective of information. We're not isolated from the perspective of solutions. The moment we start to build networks and relationships and contacts, with the moment we expose ourselves to all these resources that could potentially be made available to us, this is where we can start to leverage the things that we do on a day-to-day basis as educators, as teachers, from a tech perspective and from a mindset perspective, because we need both in order to make room for innovation. Non-linearity is the rule. Things are very sparse, but they're also very connected. And once we observe things, once we understand things from a systems perspective, that what I do is affecting what another person is doing, and what the government does, and what organizations do, and what many teachers in my area do. When we start to understand how we belong inside of systems, we start to create new dynamics. And these dynamics can leverage the power of innovation and tech and so on and so forth. And that's limitless. That offers, there are no limitations to the opportunities that can arise from connecting the dots, because everything is connected to everything else, and therefore any path is possible. And that's the beauty of it. So when we start to explore all the possibilities, all the futures, all the quantum futures, and when we start to think laterally instead of linearly, we start to understand that whatever the situation is, we can find a solution, we can find a path, and we can go in that direction. Of course, I go back to the idea that this needs trials and errors, but this also builds the resilience muscle. We can do so much more when we tap into the power of collective wisdom, when we tap into the power of our networks. And these 4 key ideas, they belong to the mental map of resilience. And the purpose of this mental map is to fight something that is called the VUCA. If you've heard of the VUCA model, feel free to share in the chat box. The V is the V of volatility. The U is the U of uncertainty. The C is the C of complexity. And the A is the A of ambiguity. And if we want to have a clear mindset that allows us to tap into the power of EdTech, to navigate through technology, to harness the power of technology in order to reach maximum innovation wherever we are and whatever the conditions are, we need to face volatility with anchor. We need to have an anchor. It could be an activity, it could be people, it could be a network, it could be a habit, it could be a mentor that you have, anything that works for you. If we want to fight uncertainty, then in this case, we need a heart that is open to possibilities. Imagine if you were born and you knew exactly what was going to happen for the 80 years of your life. How boring is that? How crushing is that? Knowing exactly what's going to happen tomorrow? Ew, no, I don't want that. Because it means that nothing other than that is possible. As we thrive when there are possibilities. So when we fight uncertainty with this openness to what's possible, when we tap into the power of imagination and determination, this is where we can transform everything that we go through into something different and new. And then there's complexity. And to deal with complexity, this is where we need the observant, analytical, critical mind of an engineer. We need to tackle the problem systemically, one issue at a time, one problem at a time, one challenge at a time. Come up with ideas, test them, see what works, what doesn't work. And based on that, implement the right course of action within a context. And last but not least, when everything is ambiguous and it's not clear, and it's like you're wearing glasses, but the glasses are not transparent and you can't really see what's around you. Well, first of all, you need to remove the glasses or clean them, obviously. But then the second thing that you need to do is connect the dots. When we start to see how these dots can connect to one another, how one person can help another, how one situation can improve another, how we can all support each other, how an idea that is implemented in Kenya is also relevant for Liberia, but it's also relevant for Lebanon, but can also inspire people in whatever in the world that is. This is where we can start to think beyond what we have and think with what could be. And that is crucial. That is a crucial transition from a mindset perspective in order to go away from what we know and create what we don't know, create all the things that can be. So these are the few thoughts that I wanted to share with you. I call it a neuroplastic system for relentless creation because it steals from neuroplasticity from the neuroscience field. It's a system because it's composed of different elements that interact with one another, that follow a certain dynamic, and that dynamic can change. Relentless because we need to be relentless. We need to fight the things, the challenges that come in front of us, and they will come. And this is a process of creation. This is a process of constant creation. And that is the beauty of it. And once we embrace this neuroplastic system for relentless creation, anything is possible. I'm open to questions. I'm also open to keeping this conversation going wherever it is, on LinkedIn, on email, on website, on social media, through Stephen, wherever that is. And yeah, so I'm open to questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Alexandra. Thank you for that melting pot of ideas, for inviting us to different realms and just localizing the ideas. Thank you so much. Personally, I really enjoyed that presentation. And I know that the conversation, like you already indicated, the conversations will continue. And I'm inviting everyone to just use the chat box while I invite the next speaker, because our time is fast spent and we just want to end this as soon as possible. People's Saturdays are being taken. Well, thank you so much. Please, we'll just keep an eye on the chat box. Everyone, put your questions there. These conversations are not ending right now. I'll be inviting Abisola Akinkunwowo for the next presentation, titled The University of the Future, Walking the High School Students Through the Transition Process. Very quickly, a brief about Abisola. Abisola Akinkunwowo is a higher education speaker and advocate for educational equity for minority students. With a background in managing education programs and policy initiatives, she has expertise in structuring programs and building curriculum for nonprofits, universities, and government agencies to give students a unique collegiate experience that promotes excellence and competence. She has headlined at professional conferences and events with audiences ranging from college administrators, university faculty, and college and high school students, with sessions on navigating the financial aid process, discussing God's purpose for our passions, the power of networking and social capital, student leadership, and more. Abisola is a proud Nigerian American, and her work has grabbed the attention of the mayor of the city of Laurel, Maryland, USA, who appointed her to serve a 2-year term on the city's Education Advisory Committee. Abisola, you're welcome to the summit. Nice having you here.
Thank you so much. Just a big thank you to Stephen and the team for inviting me here. I am super excited and I'm going to run through this. And as I am starting, I just definitely want to acknowledge everyone that is here as well. If you're still here, you're still ready and engaged and ready to learn, definitely just go ahead in the chat box and just say, I am here. So I'm going to go ahead and get going. And so I want to first talk about high school COVID-19 learning loss. So I know that earlier on, we were talking a lot about technology, and that is great. We definitely need a lot of technological, there we go, advancement in Nigeria for our students, because we definitely want to make sure that our students remain on top of their coursework, so on and so forth. And I love that Alexandra actually opened us up, or transitioned us rather, to discussion about mental health and so on and so forth. And so I will be kind of going along the lines of pedagogy and just teaching strategies, so on and so forth, that will be able to help teachers to transition their students post-COVID. And so with high school COVID-19 learning loss, it's important for us to understand that last year was hybrid. It was 100% online, whichever of the two for majority students. And so what that means is that this year, they are most likely less prepared for a very rigorous school year. Also recognizing that we may as teachers, or you may as teachers, find a decreased engagement or attendance in your students. And so have this in mind, in the beginning, so that you can actually begin to prepare for, what's going to come in the upcoming semester. And if you're not familiar with COVID-19 learning loss, you may be familiar with summer learning loss. So summer learning loss is simply the loss of knowledge that students encounter because they're not doing anything necessarily during the summer. So someone mentioned students who are always on social media and so on and so forth. And so this is something that as teachers, we should kind of keep in the back of our minds, if not really in the front of our minds, as we are going into the preparation season for the upcoming semester. And so here I have a great research article from Oluwatoyin Mary Oyinloye, who basically just went through the possible impact of COVID-19 on senior secondary school students' performances, specifically in science education in Nigeria. And this study was done in Ekiti State, Nigeria, with 3 leading science experts, expert teachers in Nigeria. And so just kind of wanted to go through that really quickly, just so that we have a point of reference for the things that I'll be discussing later on. And so in her discourse, she mentioned that teachers acknowledge that the pandemic will result in a drop of students' performances, right, through their external examination. So for the SS3 students, them being adversely affected, possibly even this year as well, in addition to last year's SS3 students, because of the loss of contact of teaching hours. And then lastly, there was a question that she posed, which is, what becomes of the students when the COVID-19 curve is flattened, which I believe we're entering into that season right now, and how will they be able to cope, with the numerous amount of workload they will be burdened with. And so her conclusion was that teachers must employ different instructional strategies to teach students within the shortest time available. And then also that if this COVID-19 pandemic affects, if it prolongs more than necessary, it could have a ripple effect on the educational system in Nigeria. And thus all essential measures should be in place to flatten that curve. AKA what that simply means is that we need an all hands on deck approach. It won't just be technology alone and an increase of that that will help flatten this curve. It won't just be, supplemental services that teachers would provide, but it's pretty much every single thing that we can think of, every single side of a student's academic journey that we need to actually take notice of. And so I'm talking about preparing for the transition. And you may ask, what transition are you talking about? There are multiple transitions that are taking place at the same time for students and for teachers. So first is the transition of playing catch up. So going to more rigorous coursework. Last year, there wasn't much of that because of the pandemic. The second transition is a new class environment. So we are going from most likely all virtual to now all in person or partially in person. And so that new class environment is a transition for students. They have been home all day with their family for, a little over a year. And now they're quickly transferring back to being in school. That is a huge environment change, which could affect their learning capabilities. And then lastly is the technological advancements in the learning environment. So again, it's also kind of like playing catch up, but specifically, I think that now because we have been in this technology is now a thing for sure for the learning environment. And so a lot of schools, universities, high schools, so on and so forth, really want to transition technology more in the classroom more than ever before, and all at the same time with these other transitions that are happening. And so with that in mind, that tells us that there is a new teacher role. So first is, of course, that mental and emotional support that students will need. Again, earlier I was talking about how, they're going from being 100% online, or maybe not even attending class, because that's also a possibility as well, right? Because, lack of power or whatever the case is could also have hindered many students from even being taught this past year. And so there may be a need for mental and emotional support, seeing their parents also at home, out of work. So many other things could have been happening during this entire year and change, right, in the pandemic, and increase of supplemental support. So that's, of course, a little bit of that emotional support as well, but that can also go into other areas depending on what supplemental means to you. Supplemental is simply anything in addition to teaching. And then the third is technological support, which we already have been discussing, I believe more so in the beginning of this entire summit. Which is, of course, the teacher being able to learn these new technologies. I believe that that's what Stephen was saying a little bit earlier, and how teachers have to take on that new role of being an expert. And if not, they may be at risk for their job. And so being able to provide that support for students. And there was another teacher who was on the line as well, who was talking about the need for teachers to gain more support themselves in knowing what to do in regards to technology and how to integrate that and how to get the resources in their classroom, so on and so forth. And so as we're thinking about those things, also remember that the students need support too in learning how to navigate these new technologies, software, so on and so forth, as we are transitioning in this post-COVID classroom. And so just some things to reconsider when it comes to adapting the classroom to this new norm. And again, this is just things to reconsider. This is not a Bible that you must go by. And so thinking about, again, mental health, you may want to think about the surprise assignments, the things that will catch the students off guard, and the amount of those things, not to eliminate them, but pop quizzes and things of that nature can actually negatively affect students, especially because they were not ready this past year for such. And then, of course, starting the semester with heavy coursework. I have not schooled in Nigeria. I have siblings that have, and I know that some schools are very infamous for the first day is a quiz. The first day is a huge test and things of that nature. And of course, that's to see where the students are at. But again, that could still possibly negatively affect students. And so, just kind of reconsidering starting off the semester with heavy coursework, and then also in addition to omitting, reconsider also omitting technology from the learning environment. I know that because some technologies are new, there is a temptation for teachers to omit it completely because they themselves are not aware of it. They are not well versed in it. And so I would definitely reconsider that type of mindset when it comes to going to the classroom and just saying, well, I don't know this, so I'm not going to introduce it. I want to encourage teachers to learn, to be students, to be students of new technology, and to definitely introduce technologies into their classroom. Things to consider, of course, study guides and cheat sheets. I know as a student, period, these things have actually increased my learning more than they did decrease it. Short breaks during the class period, these things, again, actually, they do a lot. I know for me, when I was in school, I worked 2 and sometimes even 3 jobs along with going to school. And that could be the real reality of some of our students. And so to keep that in mind, that breaks, mental breaks are important. And of course, student check-ins. I know that teachers, we aren't their parents, but we do serve as a leader role in the life of students. And so I would definitely encourage and ask teachers to consider student check-ins into their classroom environment. Of course, like I said earlier, integrating technology into the classroom, definitely consider that. If we've just been doing pen and paper this entire time, if there is that flexibility, I know that there was a discussion of access and equity. And so that's obviously, something not to ignore. And so that's why I will definitely say, if possible, right, to integrate as much technology into the classroom as possible. And then, of course, I love that earlier someone discussed innovation and problem solving. I believe that was Alexandra, and definitely involving that in your pedagogy as a teacher and not necessarily teaching to the test, because again, students can feel that and it does not motivate them to learn. Almost done here. And so it's just more practical tips for transitional support for high school students. Of course, transforming, if you do have office hours, into a safe space for students academically, of course, and in any other way possible. So, personally asking how they are doing, what's going on at home, how can you support in any way that you're able to, offering opportunities for students to meet and interact, of course, in person and virtually, depending on your school's current system when it comes to in-person or virtual gatherings. And that will obviously increase student participation because they are seeming to be, they feel like they're more involved in the classroom setting. I would also encourage taking surveys. I think that, with all of the things that we're discussing now, it needs to still in a way, go back to the students and see what can actually work. So instead of us just taking what we believe in our head is correct and what should just be done, I think it's also important to take surveys of students to see, what they already know. It's best to know what they already know so that we know how to best support them. And then lastly, like I said before, just regarding new technology, providing instructions in class. So being that teacher of the new things that you're going to introduce into your classroom. And of course, we didn't really talk much about this, but it's really important in the classroom environment, which is encouragement and celebration. Again, this hits that mental health aspect of things as a teacher to provide that supplemental support as an encourager. Encouragement is needed now more than ever for students, especially as we're transitioning out of this pandemic and, the curve is flattening. Celebration and recognition. So exam grades. I, again, didn't school in Nigeria, but have friends and family who have, and they share their experiences of everyone's grades being posted on the wall and things of that nature. And you're able to see who was top 1% and all those things. And I think that's cool. In addition, we want to definitely be able to celebrate, the students that are doing well and celebrate the students that are improving. If that's just in the first few minutes of class or something of that nature. And then of course, college signing day, not all students will go straight to college or university after school, but for those who do, it'll be great to recognize them and have superlatives and things of that nature, just as a way to kind of warm up the class as you're about to start teaching them, or in the middle, during the midterm season or during the end, during exam season. It's definitely great to have a great amount of encouragement and celebration for students. And then lastly, just for food for thought. So this is from Elizabeth Barkley, who wrote a book called Student Engagement Techniques, a handbook for college faculty. And she said, student engagement is a product of motivation and active learning. It is a product rather than a sum, because it will not occur if either element is missing. And so that engagement piece is a product of motivation and also active learning. And so I just wanted to say again, a big thank you to everyone, especially Stephen, for having me here. Of course, let's keep this conversation going and staying connected. I have my email there, my Instagram, and my LinkedIn information there for you all. So now just opening the floor if there's any pressing questions before we move on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Abisola. Like I said before, please use the chat box for your questions. We'll take all questions at the end of the event today. That was a very interesting presentation. I know you had a lot to say, but you just had to cram them into that presentation, which was excellent, by all means, very excellent. Thank you again, and thanks for the work that you do. The final speaker for today, before we open the floor for as much engagement as we want to take today, as you rather want to provide us with, our final speaker is COVID Panthy. Fascinating in all ways. And COVID will be speaking about positioning your students for Industry 4.0. A student's reflection. Why is this fascinating? COVID Panthy is a 17-year-old entrepreneur, a professional programmer, an author, a public speaker, a content creator, and an educator. He has been running multiple business activities, one of which is Texamaj Web Pavement Limited, which aims to connect youth with entrepreneurship and technology, which again comes back to impact, something that he's known for. His mission is impact, and he's also known for his educational content across different platforms on the internet, including YouTube. If you search for him online, you see all that he's doing there. He runs a podcast show where he brings some top leaders to discuss the current scenario of entrepreneurship and youths. Our speaker today is a publisher, and he's published a book on Python programming. He currently consults and coaches individuals on Python programming and marketing. COVID Panthy was recognized by IBM as an IBM champion in 2019. Welcome again, COVID, and it's nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you so much, Esteban, for your invite. It's really a great thing to have all of you, listen to all of you. And though I was not able to be in between, but yeah, I got to hear some of the ideas and concepts. Thank you so much.
All right, COVID, that's so nice. You and I will discuss a lot about your passion, what you do, and how you were mentored by a teacher. Actually, one of the things COVID will be talking about today is about how a teacher actually mentored him into becoming what he is today. Yes, and I'm so happy. Yes, someone says, wow, 17-year-old. Yeah, that is it. That is one of the, yeah, that is one of the reasons he's here today, to let we teachers know that we are not just doing this and it's not really coming forth. I mean, it's not really productive. We have a lot of people like COVID today that they are what they are today because of the effort of a teacher. Yes, many people are not talking about it, but I really want to appreciate COVID for saying that openly. So COVID, before I think the first question I would like to ask from you is how did you fall in love with programming, with coding? At what age did you get into that level? Can you please share with us?
You know, I remember when you say fall in love, I remember this time when I was a kid, you know, like maybe I was at school level, and I used to say that my girlfriend is my computer. And that's so absurd right now. Like, you know, like how computers are everywhere right now. With every person, there is one mobile. At the time, it does not used to be like that, right? Like I had to have computer set up as my girlfriend for me to, you know, actually believe that's something I love. And that's right. Like I really loved computing and computers as a whole, technology as a whole. At the time when I go back in the time, you know, like maybe 10 years ago, let's say, like there were not that many computers, right? Like especially when it comes to internet and digitalization, it was just starting out, the starting phase of it. Though it was like already so popular or, you know, relevant in the context of USA and things like it, some developed countries. In countries like Nepal, it was not that much, you know, so relevant. So it happened to me at the age of something like 9, that I came across this thing called computing, because I had my brother who used to have a computer, like, which you might know, that CRT monitor, right? Like big fat monitor with like a CPU running with fan always, you know. So it was quite like that moment, right? And that's when I was introduced with computers. I think the floppy disks were used at the time, so you can imagine when that time was. And then I came to understand this computing. I was love in computing, right? But then the programming thing came a little bit later, when I was introduced with this concept of HTML. I don't know if you guys know about HTML. It's basically a hypertext markup language, right? Like the language used to write websites, especially like skeleton of website, we can say. And I came across this thing in my computer subject in my 6th grade. And I was so interested that I was waiting for this all year across, because that was the last chapter, right? And then I came across that, and at the final stage, like, I could finally learn about programming, right? I was so excited. And then I was searching for how I can write it, and how can I can implement, because I have been always a learner of practical learning. I was always you know emphasized. And for me personally also, I have worked with practical learning more rather than theoretical, and obviously that might work to some extent, but for me personally, practical learning is what I strive for. And at that time I was searching for all these practical things that I can implement, and I never found one in that HTML chapter that I had in my book. And it was all definition, advantage, disadvantage, this and that. Then I was curious. And at the time I was not this capable of like speaking in front of people. I used to, like, I was very comfortable talking with people one to one and things like it. But when it comes to, mass speaking and speaking out in the stage and like this, uh, it was something that I didn't ever do, right? And then, but then that day was like a turning point of the event. And I stood up. I don't know how. If I look back, like it does make sense. Like if I look back, then I remember Steve Jobs saying that you can't connect dots looking forward, but you can connect always dots looking backward, right? So it makes sense. Like I can obviously look back and see, oh yeah, that's why I like stood up at that time. And I stood up. Everybody was looking at me as if like I had been like there for, a king has been there, so everybody is looking. I was sweating out. And I think most of you can relate with that situation. And then I asked this simple question, which was how to write HTML to my teacher, which was the first ever question I really asked in front of the mass. And then I don't know if you guys can maybe comment or in the chat what could be her reply. Let's see some of the chats. It's interesting to look at some guesses from people. When I asked my teacher how to write HTML, what do you think she might have replied me with? What could be the answer of a teacher when a student asks her a question? Any guesses? Because it's interesting to look at some, guess from people. Let's see.
I think at that age, that's may birth a kind of curiosity from the teacher, like at this age, what are you thinking? That is too far.
I love this comment from Abigail. Sorry if my pronunciation is not correct. She might have asked me, "Are you sure?" Yes, actually yes, because like at that time, like if I compare that question with the context of overall class, I think that was not relevant, because my classmates maybe were not able to even reach that more like point where they can think about, okay, how I can write it, because they were so focused on the grades and getting marks and like studying for the exams, right? And I think, yeah, are you sure could be a relevant question given by, sorry, answer given by a teacher. But this teacher of mine said, you will learn this in further grades, like 8, 9, 10. I was in 6. So she said in 8, 9, 10 it will be, because in curriculum, like in the books, only in the 8, 9, 10 it is like given upwards from 8th, it is given, right? Like how we can code and write and all these things. So I was so absurd, like I was so obsessed with this idea of programming and HTML and all these things. I was so stubborn that I could not live just like that. You know, you can might be relate with this thing that I'm telling with you. For example, you have a dream, right? Like for example, let's say I have a dream of let's say being a billionaire, let's say, right? Until you become that billionaire, the dropping the idea of becoming the billionaire would be very painful for you, right? Because you are so obsessed with that idea of doing something. And that's what happened to me. Like I was so obsessed with this idea of becoming a programmer. At the time I didn't know about programming, like becoming able to write HTML, that I could not listen to her, and I was just focused on this one thing, that is writing HTML. And I used to, this is where I got into like real thing, like real love with programming, let's say. That was the point. And then later on I had to learn somehow, so I came back to home. At the time, as I said, like internet was not relevant, even though like where only the rich people used to have internet in Nepal. So even that, like rich people's internet were like this might sound so cliche right now in this moment where we are living, where like internet speed has already like boosted up to like, I don't know, 100 GB or something per second. At that time it was 10 megabits per second, and megabits, not even byte, right? And that was so slow. That was the maximum like rich people could afford that in Nepal. And yeah, and then I had to come to my home. I asked my parents that if we can join internets and things like it. That was not possible. So my mom used to, this is quite interesting, and this means a lot to me and myself as a whole, you know, because my personality is something like I am so rooted down into like where I come from, like background, right? Though I have been able to achieve something, I would not say everything, but something, because there is a lot to achieve ahead, but something maybe I have achieved. I think that comes because of my root and background, right? So like what happened was, at that time my mom used to give me 5 cents. If we convert that to US dollar, maybe you can convert that to local currency also, 5 cents, which is $0.05, right? And my mom used to give this for me to, for as a bus fare, you know, like we had to take public transportation from school to home and home to school. So I was provided with this. And what I used to do was, instead of getting into bus, I used to walk from home to school, and then like save this 5 cents for 7 days. And what happened was, at the end of the week, I would have 35 cents, $0.35, and that could give me like 1 hour of cyber cafe, like time spent in cyber. And I could then use computer, do whatever. And then that's what I used to do. I would save all 7 days, and at the end of the week I would go to my you know, nearest cyber cafe and then start learning HTML. And that's how I learned about programming and things. Like it started with that, did something, and slowly the internet became the thing. And that's how I started with programming.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a very interesting story. And one thing I see in you is passion, and
Right.
it's that passion that has taken you to where you are today. That will actually lead me to the next question. I wanted to ask a question about the role of a teacher, and but from the explanation you have given, I've been able to see that one of the things that actually helped you while starting is the role the teacher played in your life. And as a programmer now, someone that is deeply rooted in it now, that's what you do for living.
Yeah.
Do you see a future where programming or coding is becoming, how will I put it now, part of the core curriculum in our institution? Because the major reason of bringing this together is to talk about the future of education. Now, going back to what you do you see programming as something that will be part of the school core subjects in the future, like we have in mathematics, and for example, in Nigeria, English language? Do you see coding or programming becoming something like that in the future?
Yeah. I would say, you know, like I've been fascinated with quotes, and you know, from successful people. And I've heard this quote from Steve Jobs, that computing and programming, especially not computing but programming, is something that you have to learn no matter what you are doing. Even if you are a farmer, it's better if you know, learn coding, because coding does not just help you. Like, obviously there is no term called coding. For people who say coder, there is no term as coder or coding or something like that. It's actually programming, because like it's called code. So to code something, people who code, they are just made to be known as coder, but there is no actual like literal meaning of that. But anyways, like coding is something like everybody should learn, because it just does not just help you in like program a program, like code a program, but it helps you in overall cognitive development of yours. I had this student one, just yesterday I had this session with her, and in her school life, she had been always obsessed with cognitive development, right? Like how we develop our mind. uh, that she came into programming, and she shared that programming has helped her to, you know, really amplify that cognitive development process of her. And that has really helped in her in many other sectors like academics and her business that she's doing. So overall, I think programming can help. It's just like math, right? Like how math does not always work for engineers, right? Math works for every person. Like even for a lawyer, math works, because he could think logically about some problems, and that could really help in getting maybe a client's, you know, win in the lawsuit or something like that. So I personally see that right now, even right now, it's relevant that that coding should be learned by every single individual. Doesn't matter, like it does not need to be learned like full-fledged or something like that. At least some basic idea of coding, I think that's really important. But again, now we see how this future is going towards, right? Like how the is going towards. It's more like digitalization online, as the first speakers, Rosario said, the augmented reality, virtual reality, things like it. It's all becoming so relevant, right? Like this is the future. Whether we agree with this fact or not, this is the future. So it's better if we get our arsenal ready for that future, right? And coding is the fundamental arsenal, fundamental weapon in the arsenal needed for the future, I think. And that's why I think even right now, this subject, coding especially, like what is happening right now is like computing is the main subject and coding is a part of it. I think that's not how it should go. Like computing is totally different thing, coding is totally different thing. That's how I view, because computing deals with more like the machine, coding deals with more like problem solving capacity of that machine. So I think we should see both at these things as two different distinctive things. It's just like saying physics and biology, right?
All right. Thank you so
Yeah.
thank you so much. I will ask two questions, and that will be the final for today. Number one question is the previous question I asked was more about the students, the key. Yes, the students, are they going to be learning this? Now let's go to the teacher's perspective. Now, do you feel as a teacher, I need to get, now you mentioned that coding is part of the future. So as a teacher, are you advising that we should take it as part of the skills we are going to develop ourselves in? For example, many teachers are learning about how to use virtual reality now. And I mean, VR box. Are you saying something like coding also should be part of the things teachers should get involved in? Then the second question and the last question is about our children. Like I asked a question from Rosario about at what age is okay, is good for a child to start using virtual reality box. Also, as a child, you started at age 9. Do you think the way you started at age 9, it's something that every child can achieve? Or what age as a professional now? I'm not talking to you now as a student, but I'm talking to you as a professional that are really gone into that, and you know what it takes to do it, to get it done. So at what age do you think kids be introduced to coding or programming? Two questions now, teachers and kids being introduced to programming.
Cool. So I would say the question that you asked is a very good question. I think it's very relevant also right now, because as we can see, the whole thing going towards digitalization, online things, is like our teachers required to learn about coding and you know, things like it. I would say it's very relative. It's not general and specific that I can like say, okay, yes, because I think for me personally, I'm not a full-time coder, like developer, right? I have a company which is a tech company which does all these websites, marketing, things like it. I have been also into marketing things. I also create content on YouTube. So I have multiple different things. So I would not say that I have been a developer anywhere in my life, but I was keen in this concept of programming that I made this into my roots, right? As I said, like I think programming, if someone asks me like, okay, what are your key skills, I would still have programming in my pocket, because that is what helped me to learn all the things. For example, I would like to share one example. This interesting story of mine. I was into this for example, like you were doing this conference event. We were also doing this event 2 years back in 2019 from our company, and this was a international event on youth entrepreneurship and technology. That's what we say as YET conference. And we were doing this conference, and I mean, maybe most of people don't know this, that actually I have been also into music and other things also, like not predominant into like business industry, like the industry itself, but more like other parts of arts and things like it. So I had been into all these things. I have been into art paintings and all these things also. And at that time, like when we were doing this conference, we had to create our websites, we had to create our apps. For that, my skills helped. Though I had hired people for doing that, I could still do some check and balance on that, right? And second thing was, we had to create this theme song for this conference. So my vocal skills and music skills also came into play. Though I didn't sing for it, I could still guide people on that, or assess the people, right? That also helped. So other parts also came to the play. But what I wanted to say is like, the whole thing about that conference was connecting, and connecting things, right? So I think personally every skill can connect. So like it is very beneficial that you learn anything, like anything comes into the play. That's what I've been a believer of, like learn whatever comes in your hand, right? So because like just recently I started learning flutes. Though I don't tell myself that much into music industry, I still try to learn everything that comes to mind, because I think everything helps at the end, right? Every skills helps at the end. So I would say, if you have time and if you have this energy and effort to learn coding and do something with it, obviously it will be helpful. I'm like guarantee that it will be helpful, because that's the future we are talking about, right? But I think for teachers, I think that's not a compulsion, but that should be out of curiosity and what do we call this, like out of this curiosity to learn, right? So I think that should be the main reason of learning. So if that is, then I think everybody should learn it. And I would come back to this Steve Jobs quote, that he said that computing should be learned by everyone, even if he is a farmer or not. Now coming back to another question that you shared, um, at what age like a person should start into coding? Like can child, like I started at the age of 9. Can a child learn at the age of 9? Well, again, like that's relative question, right? Like it relates into different aspects of life. For example, parenting, environment, everything comes into the play. But I would say, if the person has this interest, and if this person is shown that interest, I think it is very relevant to start at an early as it possible, right? Because I remember this, Elon Musk started a different school for his 5 kids, and like different school which didn't talk about academics and curriculum, but more of a skills based school, just for his students. Obviously he's a rich guy, he can do it, whatever. But what I'm talking about is like what our main focus should be. Though we can't start a school for our kids, I think our main focus should be to enhance their skill set rather than enhancing their mark set, right? Because it's very much uh, relevant thing right now, because of the whole thing going on, pandemic and things like it. People are thinking about grades and mark sets and things like it. They are starting to question, are they really necessary or not? Because prior to this, they were so bound in this thought bubble that grades and mark set are everything. So grades are what dictates and assess my qualities. But now this digitalization and online learning has been so prevalent. Everybody has been starting to question. And even like I would like to share this, that I had made this video of carrying a certificate, and that went viral in TikTok. So you can just think about how much relevant it is in today's context, because like it had some, I don't know, 500,000 views. That's why I say like the grades and the things should not matter at all. So I think for a child to start, I think coding as a skill, yes. But if it comes to computing as a subject in curriculum and assessing that as a mark in grades, I would say that's not a something that is very healthy. And just because I would like to, because the learning things are coming, and I have been listening to everybody here and very profound thoughts, I would just like to share one thing. Can I, Steve? I have this thing called, I don't know if I have seen this, anybody has seen this. This is like singing ball, this is called. This is very popular in Tibet, and this comes from Tibet actually. I don't know if you have seen this. It's actually a ball, nothing else, like ball of metal, ball. And we have this wooden stick. This is like wooden stick, smoothen out, nothing, right? And the thing is like it's called singing ball because of a reason, because it sings. Let me show you. Can you hear that? Right? You could hear that. But let me show you one thing. Nothing, right? What I wanted to show you is like when you actually open up without any resistance, nothing is there, right? There is so much room for the reverberation and things like it, and there is so much room to learn more, right? There is so much more room to expose ourselves. That's why the vibration is going on, because there is no resistance. But at the same time, like when I put the resistance, my hands are resisting this, nothing comes out of it, right? So for us to actually learn and get something out of ourselves, I think we have to be open for things. And there is one concept that I have came up with, which is called the three. This is like a model of three. And the first aspect of this is knowledge, because we need some knowledge to start off, right? That would be our first process of learning. Second process, like step of in learning, is known as devotion. Because without devotion we say as like, what is devotion? It's basically opening up and accepting what it is, right? The reality. And I'm not resisting myself to get stuck in something, right? I'm open up, and I can accept everything, I can embrace everything. And the third thing is belief, and that becomes our belief, right? Like once we devote into something and learn, like have knowledge on it, then we have this belief that I can do something. And I think that's when the singing ball actually sings, right? And that's when I think human potential is unleashed at the most. So I think when it comes to learning and education and things like it, I think we should not be resisting ourselves. As I said, like every skills can matter, every things can matter. Nothing, I think nothing should resist ourselves to do something, right? And we should just open up, accept the reality, and then go for it, I think.
Thank you so much, COVID. Wow, I'm reading something now. It's a wonderful illustration, deep insights. It's so amazing. I said something that this is more about the student's perspective.
Right.
And though from our conversation, I know you are not really someone that spend much time going to school. But
actually, I'm a dropout, by the way. If you guys don't know, I'm a dropout. Left college at 11. I never went to 12th. So it comes from a unconventional person. So
yeah.
It's upon you if you want to take it or not.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. It's good to know that something like this can happen from students that have self-determination. And that is another thing that I believe maybe in other talks we'll be having next time. We'll be talking about self-determination. We'll be talking about self-regulation on the aspect of the students now, and maybe how teachers can teach a student how to self-regulate, how to self-determine, and how to make some choices without even being affected by external factors. But I really want to say a very big thank you for what you are doing and what you've said today. And that will be
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That will be the end of the program for today. And I will be saying a very big thank you for to everyone that have made it to the program today. I know it's been like 2 hours, 30 minutes now. It's not really easy standing or sitting down in front of computer, watching others. So I really want to say a very big thank you. Thank you, my very wonderful person from Lebanon, Alexandra. Thank you for your time. All the way from Estonia. Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you to Rosario from New York City. Okay, others, I think others left because of one other thing. Oh, I have Adepeju, my very good friend from Nigeria too. Thank you for making it here today. And even in their absence, I want to say a very big thank you to Go To from Liberia. And also, am I missing out? Okay, before I tell, oh, sorry, my wonderful co-host. She's my professor, she's my academic mentor, all the way from Canada. Thank you so much, Esther, for your time. Thank you for being there. And I want to encourage everyone to be in touch with let's be in touch with the speakers. If you have any question you want to ask from them, they are available. If you want to share anything with them, or if you have anything that you feel you want them to help you with, or to just collaborate with you. And for the question that was asked the other time about virtual reality, I will be speaking after now. I will get in touch with Rosario on what we can do, maybe running training sessions for teachers on how to use virtual reality and other things. But please stay in touch. We'll be sending you some messages in your email and every other platform. You can also check our social media platform for updates from there. Also, I can see a question about certificates. Yes. How do we get the videos and certificates? All right. For the video, it will be made available on our Facebook channel. It will also be, right now as we're talking, it's being streamed on our YouTube channel. And also, we'll send it to you in an email. And for the certificate, if you are interested, it's only on request. If you are interested, we'll send you the certificate. It's not for just send it to everyone, because this is not an event that we are so sure of people that log in or people that log up. We don't know how many people are here. So if you are interested, please feel free to get in touch after now so we can get the certificate across to you. A very big thank you to my friend from Washington. Okay, she left too. Abisola, that talk about transition. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Please continue to check our website for other programs and other events that we'll be having later. Until then, have a wonderful morning, have a wonderful evening, have a wonderful afternoon, or whatever it is, wherever you are. Bye. See you next time.